Hello everybody and welcome to a video on the Pole Position YouTube channel. I know it's been a while since everything that's obviously been happening in the world and of course in the sport of Formula 1. You know, we've obviously had the delayed start to the season. Race after race are now being cancelled or you know, postponed, looking to have races later on in the year. So I've sort of taken a step back from it because obviously you know, there's obviously worse things going on in the world than Formula 1 at the minute, and you know, wanted to sort of see what's going to happen in terms of, you know, what F1 are going to do, and so obviously some more news has been coming out recently, so I just thought I'd put a video out just to discuss it. Obviously when the season does come around again, I will be doing much more videos than have been done in the last couple of weeks. So obviously, apologies for that, but you know, there is obviously you know, more important things that are going on right now. So I didn't think there was any reason to put videos out. So, but you know, we've obviously had some news that has come out in the last few days that, you know, revolves around what could happen for the sport as of this season. So I just thought I'd go through a few things for that. So yeah, let's just go into it now. Obviously the video really has stemmed from the fact that the Canadian Grand Prix, which was due to be held to the 12th to the 14th of June, that's also been not been cancelled but been sort of postponed, and what Chase Carey, who's obviously the chairman of Liberty Media and sort of deals with F1 at the minute, what he said is, as you know, we want to make sure we have the necessary sort of medical information and make sure we make the right decisions at the time. And obviously, you know, what the Canadian promoters have said, you know, they think maybe it's the best time to sort of postpone it now. I think they were looking to do it before the Easter weekend, and obviously with Easter, you know, being here now, they had to make that decision earlier in the week. They obviously have done that. He has said, like in the actual statement though, we will put on a great show when we arrive later this year, and that's in regards to Montreal, because you know, we're talking about, we look forward to travelling to Montreal and we're going to be doing it later in the year. So that race looks to be already cemented into the calendar at some point later on this year in terms of F1. Obviously we know that the Australian Grand Prix looks to have been properly cancelled. I know the Monaco one has definitely been cancelled and we won't have a Monaco Grand Prix this year. Australia, I haven't seen any like main confirmation of that, but with what's been going around, they have been saying Australia and Monaco, so I'm guessing, you know, them two are definitely out of the question, but all the others are still up in the air as to, you know, are we going to see them races again this year. So yeah, but in terms of the Canadian Grand Prix, the promoters said they would have been honoured to host the first race of the season, which is what it looked like it was going to be. You know, around the middle of June looked to be, you know, when maybe we could start racing again. But obviously we're saddened that they had to postpone it, and obviously not taking the decision lightly. But following expert guidance and medical advice, you know, that's the decision that they've come to, and you know, that, as F1 fans, we just sort of understanding that at the minute, that, you know, that's what's going to happen. You know, that's what we've seen, you know, from the Australian Grand Prix all the way through to now, you know, the middle of June at the Canadian Grand Prix. You know, that's what's happened, and you know, we've just sort of got to deal with it. Like I said before in the start of the video, there's much worse things going on in the world right now, so you know, to not have F1, you know, it's not a major thing. So you know, I know Ross Brawn has been talking, I'm going to go into that in a minute, about when we could start the season possibly, and what could happen around that. But yeah, I mean, as much as disappointment as an F1 fan, you know, there's obviously other sports, all other sports around the world have stopped as well. So, you know, people that enjoy the sports for like football, rugby, you know, everything has stopped. So it's just a bit annoying for us, you know, to be able to see it, and we, you know, it was so pumped up for this season and so looking forward to it, and yeah, it's just a little bit, you know, obviously disappointing, but you know, like I said, you know, that's what's happening. We've just got to sort of deal with the weirdness of what 2020 has sort of brought us. In terms of the actual shutdown of Formula 1, the actual shutdown's been extended by 2 weeks, with obviously dealing with the coronavirus pandemic. On Monday it was announced that the F1 teams, the actual F1 and the FIA, they held a conference call and sort of dealt with a number of matters that were going on. One of them was probably the Canadian Grand Prix postponement. But obviously in with that was the extension of the full sort of shutdown of Formula One. It was a unanimous approval. Everyone decided it was the right thing to do, and so they've moved the days from 21 days that was already in to 35 days of sort of the shutdown. Now obviously that differs with some people, because I think Ferrari started their lockdown much quicker than other teams, so that can sort of depend on, each team is different, but with sort of what's going on in terms of the UK as well at the minute, obviously we're not sure how long it's going to last, so obviously teams that are based in the UK are obviously following that guideline as well. So yeah, I mean, it just all depends really, and how this sort of gets sort of dealt with, and how long it'll last. So that means nobody's really working on the cars, not much is going on. A lot of the teams, like have already been discussed in the news, are working alongside health organisations and sort of the NHS in the UK to try and help in any way they can in terms of equipment that they can build, or help in terms of the information and what they use to build F1 cars. It's really helping in terms of like breathing equipment as well. So F1 are really doing their jobs, really doing the job well in terms of trying to help. I know Mercedes has been in the news. 7 UK teams are trying their best in this country, which is absolutely fantastic. Discussions obviously to remain open during the pandemic, and whether the shutdowns can be extended or changed in any way. So it's still an ongoing discussion, and hopefully we see sort of better news coming out of not just for the sport, but for the entire world, which is the main thing. We need to make sure that everything gets sorted and we can try and stop this as quick as possible. But obviously that's for people that are much smarter at that job than me. I'm just talking about F1. But people that are really helping, obviously, like I said, Project Pit Lane is the 7 F1 teams working on respiratory devices. That's words to get out in this country, which is absolutely fantastic, and really helping to sort of aid it in that way. Former McLaren boss Ron Dennis is also getting involved. Launched a Salute the NHS .org website, where he's put money into the organisation that he's just made, and he's trying his best to sort of feed the health workers during the crisis. And obviously his target is to deliver 1 million meals in 3 months, where it's most needed. He's applauded the immense efforts and every individual and organisation that's sort of working in this period and working flat out to try and help people with this sort of horrible illness that's coming about. And obviously he's also appealing to the business community as well, to see if they can invest in it as well, and they can help and try and get this organisation that he's sort of come up with and sort of helped start moving to sort of hit that ambitious target, like he said, of 1 million meals in 3 months, which is really good for sort of Ron Dennis. He was on the news saying how passionate he is about this and wants to do something about it, and obviously that's fantastic that people in F1, like I said, are really helping in this way. I mean, tyre supplier Pirelli are also assisting. Italy obviously have had it really bad, and and sort of everywhere around the world, Spain, and it really is sort of a global thing that's going on now. So everyone that's helping is doing a huge amount. So obviously Pirelli, the headquarters are actually in Milan in Italy, which is one of the seriously affected areas with this coronavirus. So they've been helping in terms of organising collections for vital medical equipment, ventilators, masks, aprons, anything that they can do. They've been helping to sort of aid in any way they can to sort of help get them collections go from one place to the other. They also do the Pirelli calendar. It has been postponed this year for only the 2nd time in history, and the budget that goes towards making the calendar has all been donated to charities fighting the disease in Italy, which is fantastic. And I think their donations from Pirelli itself has gone up to about £1 million now, which is absolutely fantastic that they're doing that in the effort. So there's so many people that are doing so much. I mean, obviously drivers are taking pay cuts, with obviously the fact that they're not racing, so they are taking pay cuts in terms of what's actually going on, and that's obviously helping in terms of teams staying afloat. But the likes of Williams and that, I think they've had to put staff on that furlough scheme for the UK government and things like that. So I think the drivers are actually doing their bit to try and help minimise minimise any issues that are going on in terms of the teams as well. So I think it's just a huge collective thing, and it's, you know, great to see. I mean, obviously as F1 fans, we're obviously not seeing the racing, but they're still putting a lot of stuff out. We're seeing obviously the virtual Grand Prix races, which is you know, really good to see. I watched the one that was on for the Australian Grand Prix because obviously Jenson Button was in it, so you know, that was really good to watch. They're obviously putting classic races on, which is fantastic. The 4 races, obviously the Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton race in Bahrain, that was a good one to sort of watch back. So they're doing, you know, they are doing a lot. I mean, Sky Sports putting on podcasts, a lot's going on. So, you know, as much as the races aren't happening, we're still getting a lot of stuff in terms of F1 fans to watch. You know, we would love to see racing for this year, but you know, what's actually coming out is actually pretty good as well. So I mean, like I said, you know, everybody's doing their bit in terms of what's going on in terms of the F1 world. In terms of what's actually going on in terms of when the sport will look to be back, Ross Brawn has sort of come out to say F1 will come out of this crisis, you know, even stronger. They've moved to reduce costs to protect teams. So, you know, 3 teams of, like I said, Williams were already, like I said, put staff on furlough. Racing Point is another one. McLaren is another one. Senior management and drivers have taken pay cuts. So obviously, you know, everything's being sort of adjusted. It's not just like other sports. F1 is very much sort of in the sort of spotlight to look at and see what they can do to sort of help minimise costs and so try and do their best for actual the health organisations as well, and see if there's anything they can do. In terms of the actual season, Brawn has said it will be likely to begin in Europe. And potentially start the season behind closed doors. Now, initially that's what Bahrain was going to be, and that was going to be like the first race of the season, and that was going to be behind closed doors. Going to be no fans, nothing, only the sort of the teams and maybe a few media to obviously do the actual race. But obviously that was postponed. And yeah, with the Canadian Grand Prix now being postponed, I'm not actually sure what would have been the first race of the season had it been after Canada. It would have been, was it Austria or something like that? I'm not particularly sure. They've actually taken the calendar down off the F1 website, which obviously they would, because you know it's, you know, the calendar is not actually there anymore. It's all the races, half of the races have been, like the first 9 races have gone. What they've actually got on their website is F1 is currently working on with our promoters on a revised 2020 calendar. So yeah, they don't actually know what the first race of the season actually is going to be for the 2021. Desire to go racing as soon as possible is what Ross Brawn has also said. If anything, to give fans some entertainment in difficult times, even if that means holding some of the initial events without fans. And like I said, you know, as fans, we'd love to still be watching the sport, you know, with some of us at home at the minute and trying to find things to do. It would be good to have you know, F1 on at that time, but only, you know, if it's safe to do so. And obviously looking at maybe hosting it behind closed doors, is that a possibility? They're looking at many options at the minute. So, you know, if that's the case, then, you know, it's still an F1 race, you know. If we can be able to watch it, that's great, but obviously the health and safety of everyone is the most important thing, which is why they've obviously postponed as many races as they have. Travel for the teams and travel for everyone involved is going to be one of the big issues. This is a vodcast or a podcast they were doing for Sky Sports. If you want to check the full interview out with Ross Brawn, that would be probably on their website or their YouTube channel. Our view is probably a European start, and could be a closed event. You know, making sure everyone is tested, cleared, and that there's no risk to anybody. You know, obviously they all went to the Australian Grand Prix, as we know. One of the team members at McLaren contracted or had symptoms that were around the coronavirus, and obviously the race was cancelled from then on. But you know, it sort of was cancelled. Was it the day of first practice? So you know, it was very late. So everybody was sort of there at the event. So obviously they want to make sure that, you know, if they do set a date, everyone's tested, everyone's cleared, and there's no risk to anyone at all in terms of that. We have a race with no spectators. It's obviously not great, because obviously the money comes in for fans coming to the race, but is it better than no racing at all? So that's the dilemma that they've got to sort of build up. You know, what would that be? I think, you know, I don't know how it would work, because F1 would lose, like the actual Liberty Media and that would lose a lot of money with people not going to the event. But I suppose, you know, in terms of actually getting the season going as well, if you start later on in the year, there's obviously going to have seriously less races, because when will you start the season for 2021? You know, it is a really hard balance to sort of strike as what they're going to do. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously they're trying to still race the structure. I mean, 19 race season still possible with a July start is how they're looking at it. 18 to 19 race calendar. There could be with a series of triple headers followed by a weekend off. Now, that is a real possibility, because obviously with them starting so late, they will miss the summer break. There will be no summer break this season. They'll obviously try and put it as close to Christmas as possible. So you know, that is a serious possibility if you put triple headers in the way. Now obviously that affects you know, teams having to bring their cargo places, but you know, if they can do it in, normally they have one sort of team that goes to one base and then one team that drives to the race, you know, 2 weeks ahead, or you know what I mean. So you know, teams do have that amount of sort of lorries or whatever to distribute from one place to the other. Like the Red Bull sort of hospitality areas, they have 2, I think. So one can go to one race, one can go to the race after. So that is, you know, definitely a possibility of them doing that. That shouldn't be an issue for the teams, but it would just be the tiredness of going for doing a triple header. But yeah, like I said, you know, with them not having a summer break off, that is a possibility that they can do triple headers and then a week off. So 8 races a minimum that we can have for a World Championship. So we have to do at least 8 races this year for a driver to win the World Championship. So, I mean, that would be weird if there was only 8 races of the season, and say Lewis Hamilton slipped up on a couple, you know, he wouldn't be World Champion because there was that many races less. I mean, that could really actually spice up the championship. But obviously we want as many races as possible. Can we stray into January to finish the season? I mean, it's certainly possible, but then you're also taking into effect next year's calendar, which I don't think is something they want to do. So, you know, if that would be a possibility, I'd rather they didn't. I'd rather just have less races this year and make sure that 2021 is the full race calendar with no issues at all, really. But yeah, if they're able to start in the beginning of July, they can see like 19 races being on the calendar, which is obviously something we want to see. But it obviously depends on how all the countries are doing in terms of actually hosting the event for the season. So they're looking at all different options, and obviously that's great to see. And yeah, you know, let's just hope that, you know, we get racing as soon as possible. There's loads of other news, you know, going out at the minute. A lot of it is to do with like the virtual Grand Prix. We're saying a lot about the virtual Grand Prix. You know, if people are enjoying that, then that's great. I don't mind the virtual Grand Prix, but you know, it's just not the same. So if I miss one, it's not really an issue for me about missing the racing. But yeah, so I mean, that's just a few things to talk about in terms of the F1. You know, I will be trying to do videos as much as possible in terms of you know, any F1 news or any major news that comes out. So if they announce that, you know, we will be starting the season at this certain time, I will obviously do a video about it. If there's any important news, I will come out and do a video. But like I said, you know, I have been a little bit quiet in terms of this channel because, you know, there are obviously worse things that are going on right now. So you know, if we're missing F1, you know, there's not really much to do. But once the season gets started, I will be trying to do as many things as possible, and maybe like looking to try and get a few people on this podcast to talk about, a few people on the videos to talk to as well, and get their thoughts maybe on you know, how they thought the season was going to start, and just a few things like that I could try and do as well. But yeah, I mean, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you've got any thoughts on, you know, how the season and how the calendar could line up and when we think we'll be starting racing again, you know, please let me know in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching.